So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing. I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. I'm Taylor Baker.
And I'm Michael Clausen.
Oh, hey, Michael.
Oh, hey, Taylor. What are we drinking today?
Tangerine Pale Ale. I think it's something Tangerine Sunshine Pale Ale from Hellbent Brewing Company. We took a little Thanksgiving break, and now we're back with 4 big titles.
That we are. It's a busy month. Lots coming out, lots to see, lots to talk about.
But first, we both haven't seen the trailer for No Time to Die. Let's fix that.
Let's do it.
Why would I betray you?
We all have our secrets. You just didn't get to yours yet.
The world is arming faster than we can respond. Where's 007?
Alright, we just watched the trailer for the upcoming James Bond movie, No Time to Die. What do you think?
I'm excited. The sets look amazing. I guess maybe this is one of those cases where I just haven't been following the production well enough. I was under the impression that Carrie just took over it like this summer. Late summer, and the movie appears finished. I'm not sure if Danny Boyle's footage was used or how far they got with the previous screenplay. We'll be talking about Scott Z. Burns' film The Report. He apparently at least co-wrote this film. Carrie did Maniac, which we talked about last year. Ana de Armas will be in Knives Out. Daniel Craig will also be in Knives Out. Léa Seydoux is... she was previously in 007, Blue is the Warmest Color. This is a treasure trove of talent, and it really reminds me of Maniac, where I don't think it's going to be perfect, but it's going to be thoroughly enjoyable to almost every person that wants to watch it, which is impressive considering what we last saw out of Spectre.
Yeah. Lots of connections today between all the different titles we are covering, no doubt. Of all the different franchises out there, I think James Bond would definitely be towards the top for me. I'm always excited for a new James Bond movie. I would say this looks about as exciting to me as any of the others. Just a sexy, stylish, slick action movie that, is just... kind of catnip. When you watch the trailer, you're like, I just have to lay my eyes on that. With Bond, I usually always kind of forget after a few months what the story was about, what the characters were even all about.
Yep.
So I just always kind of hope that the plot doesn't really get in the way of just kind of enjoying the style and the action.
Especially now that they seem to be referencing more than previously the previous films. It does have a little bit of a visual cinematic tone change that both feels influenced by Carrie, but also feels influenced by Mission Impossible.
Totally.
Fallout.
Yeah.
I don't know if you picked up on that, but it definitely feels dark. I believe that the tone is called tungsten, which comes through even to me in grayscale. There's just a sheerness to the quality of the image where it's working in these really pristine shades of really dark darks and really dark brights in a weird way. Did you see that as well?
Yeah, I think it looks great. The color and movement and style, I think it's very slick, and just kind of irresistible to look at.
I believe you said you saw a release date for this film?
According to Google, just the very first thing I landed on said April 2020.
That
seems soon.
Seems a little bit too soon, but that sounds great to me.
I hope that is accurate. I'm going to not get my hopes up. It just seems like a weird time. I'm going to guess whatever I landed on was maybe optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, that would be 3 months before Tenet, or it would need to release in November, which would be 3 months after Tenet. But I think the rule is kind of like Nolan action movies. You tend to not try to crowd the field during that time because he's just going to steal your money. So I see the April making sense. I can't remember a 007 movie not coming out in November or October since I've been paying attention.
You're totally right. I remember always seeing them like kind of in the holiday period.
Yeah, like Spider-Man used to always come out in May.
Yeah, I weirdly associate them with the holidays, the James Bond movies.
Yeah, it's like a Christmas movie to watch with Dad.
But yeah, not going to complain if April is what we get. So
that'd be fantastic. It'd make up for February because we know it's going to suck. On to Black Widow.
It's good to see you too, sis.
What brings you home?
We have unfinished business. We have to go back to where it all started.
Lucky us.
One thing's for sure. It's gonna be a hell of a reunion.
All right, Michael, that was the trailer for Black Widow, and we're both smiling.
We'll find out why.
Why don't you take the lead on this one?
Well, as anyone who follows the show consistently would probably knows, I have not kept up with the MCU extensively. I don't think this is going to change that. I don't know that this will be the one I decide to finally show up for. Kind of mixed on it, I guess. I kind of like the feel it has as an action movie.
But kind of hate the cheesiness of it.
Yeah, also just not really that into the look, the kind of the texture of it.
Agreed.
I love Florence Pugh. I love Rachel Weisz. But for me, that just makes me like a little more bummed that like they did this and not something else that I would rather see. It usually doesn't, excite me to see stars I like go into a franchise that I don't like. It just means that like there was an opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not super pumped. What about you?
I see 4 actors that are competent, 3 of which are amazing. Acting each in a separate movie, from what I can tell. Florence Pugh's character does not live in the same world as Scarlett Johansson's character. It does not live in the same world as Rachel Weisz's character. This is signified by the seriousness of Florence Pugh's acting, and the Scarlett Johansson Black Widow character is not something that acts at that level, so they just juxtapose each other in a weird way that creates an uncanny valley of acting versus the character just being Scarlett. Like, kind of in some way, like it's just Scarlett's more badass alter ego. I would say, because she's great at acting. We'll get to that in Marriage Story, but this is not an example of that. And then Rachel Weisz is doing something in between that we saw her do in The Lobster that just doesn't fit with Midsommar's capital A acting and Scarlett's passive character work. And David Harbour is being his best Chris Evans in a movie that doesn't appear to have that comedic tone. Perhaps with reshoots and extensive editing, this trailer will no longer symbolize what the film is, but at this moment, I think I might stay in that weekend.
I think we're on the same page here. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good point that they feel like they're in different movies, and maybe you kind of think that like it's bound to happen in cinematic universes where you're pulling people from different stuff that eventually, you might hit points where they should not have been in the same movie. And yeah, I mean, I think that's totally on point.
But then I also would make the point that I'd love to see Weisz and Pugh and Johansson in a serious film.
For sure.
Together. So, Greta Gerwig. Hope you're listening.
Exactly.
So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get to something less torturous. The torture report, known as The Report.
After 9/11, everyone was scared. hijacked plane.
Scared it might happen again.
Obvious terrorist attack.
It was my second day of grad school. Next day, I changed all my classes to national security.
Morning, Dan.
Morning, Senator.
Have you seen the story today in the New York Times?
Evidently, the CIA destroyed tapes of interrogations of Al-Qaeda detainees.
I want to find out what was on the tapes and why they were destroyed.
The Report, directed by Scott Z. Burns, written by as well. I think it's an adapted screenplay. Not sure what the original title of the book or original title was.
I know it was influenced by quite a few different pieces of written work, but specifically the Torture Report. And then there is a book that I don't recall the name of that he used specifically, and then went to Daniel Jones to write it from Jones's perspective as best he could.
An Amazon original, streaming now on Prime. I think it got a minor theatrical release, but not locally here in Seattle.
Well, no, it did.
Did it? Did it play at the Crest?
Yeah. It's playing... no, it's not a Netflix film. It's a Prime film.
Yeah,
it
that's what I said.
played...
Did I say Netflix?
You said the Crest. The Crest only plays Netflix.
Oh, gotcha.
Not Prime. They have a deal with Landmark. So, no, it played the Majestic Bay Theater.
Oh, yeah, right.
Last 2 weeks ago. Remember, before you left, we were looking at it. So it did get a theatrical release. They shot it as an independent film for $8 million, and it was acquired by Amazon at Sundance. So it wasn't commissioned.
Yeah. I liked this movie more than I expected to.
You did. You liked it more than I expected you to.
Yeah, I had kind of modest expectations. I thought it would feel just kind of like too much Oscar bait for me. But I actually liked it a decent amount. I thought it was pretty crisp and compelling and kind of succinct, almost kind of essay-like, which is like not how I would normally describe the kinds of movies I like. It just kind of felt right for the material here. Yeah, I'll start there. That I'm positive on this one. What about you?
Yeah, less than you, but barely. I just have some questions with pacing, I guess, and just I think that it doesn't hit a Sorkin-like quality at any point. I think when it's at its best is when Driver gets to take over a scene, or when Benning gets to take over a scene, or I mean, like those scenes with Tierney. Not that she's bad, it doesn't read right. Like there's just not enough time spent to fully hit that emotionality of where she's coming from and I don't want to say that like he's not even-handed. I think that he is really bipartisan in his film, especially with the ending, which he started with that ending of McCain's speech and the McCain-Feinstein bill being passed. But there's just not enough humanity put into the CIA at some level for the movie to completely work for me. It's not like I want the people that are doing terrible things to become humanized, but I think that there's just one more character angle that he could have added in to make it hit right, because he does address with John Hamm's character that they need the CIA to do like the drone program and stuff like that, which is handling these other things. So I think that I'm just less high on it for some very specific reasons.
Yeah. You talk about some humanity that's missing. I mean, I think I maybe got that with some of the CIA and the sense that they're looking for an approach that will work just out of such deep fear that it could happen again. But completely agree that like the psychologists are like the capital V villains of the movie.
And because Tierney's like an apologist for them, she becomes a weak character. I think through happenstance, because she's there defending them, while Tim Blake Nelson's like, for real though?
Yeah. I don't know that this is necessarily a criticism, but I mean those psychologists are made out to be such bad guys, like through and through. I don't know. This is maybe just my own ignorance. Like what exactly what incentive they had exactly if this program was being like sold to the CIA or what. I was never quite sure like the incentive for them to push through this
money.
I guess
an
it was
endless
money.
well of money that the CIA has access to.
I suppose I don't recall that like being a detail that was really discussed in the movie. Was like
no,
what
it was
payout they were
shown
getting.
with
Maybe,
the airplane scene. If you remember that at all, their private airplane, where they talk about like just keep getting this money. It's kind of a passive conversation whenever they are there, where they're just fabricating lies because we know that torture is the quickest way to get false confessions. We saw that with the Americans in the Korean War that were made to say false things about America. So,
well, yeah, like I think like science might show that, but the movie suggests that this, like some of the members of the CIA didn't know that they were trusting the psychologists that they would get answers from this.
Yeah.
So to me it's not necessarily eviscerating the CIA. Like there is some understanding for just how badly they wanted something to work and how willingly they might overlook the fact that it's not working.
Yeah, and
but
maybe
the psychologists really get no benefit of the doubt.
And then in that is maybe a little bit of a criticism of like the university system and their studies and the psychologists that come out of that with these proofs that end up not working after further evaluation. Kind of
but
like
slick PowerPoints.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the kind of clarity with which it walked us through the process, through the story, I just really kind of appreciated. I just thought it was very kind of efficient and clear and
methodical.
I'm kind of nodding my head along with the movie, which I don't always like to do. That's not like the most interesting movie-going experience. So, I might chalk it up to having lower expectations that I came out kind of high on it because I was like, oh, that was pretty good.
Well, I think that the meat or the marrow in the bone there is the fact that we never we don't side with Daniel for bullshit reasons. We're not going home with him and seeing him be a victim, and we see him stand up and do a leak on the CIA that puts them on their heels so that they can attack him. We just see him doing the work continuously. So instead of there being like a political agenda or a manipulation of emotion, it's just you're siding with the guy who's working hard for what is it, an hour and 40 minutes or something. And there's just something pleasurable in like this guy's doing the work and he's not taking shortcuts and you're along with the ride and he's working in a bipartisan way, which is that's just easy to nod your head along with. And it's fun in some capacity because you get to do it so rarely.
Yeah.
It's like a good horror movie, a bipartisan film that criticizes government. Like what?
Yeah, and to just see someone toil like he does, and then to have all the hard work be suppressed, like it's just kind of impossible to not be frustrated by that. Like even though like that's the point of the whole movie, it's maybe not subtle. I also just like can't kind of resist it. I'm like, yeah, that really is frustrating.
And then when he doesn't whistle blow.
Yeah.
And he could have. Because Matthew Rhys plays the character that he always plays, which is the newspaper reporter.
Yeah.
In a car, in a parking lot.
Yeah.
Or in a parking garage.
He's up from The Americans, right?
Yeah, he's from The Americans, but he had the same role, I believe, in... Was it The Report? Or not The Report, sorry. The Meryl Streep Spielberg movie.
Is that right? The Post?
Yeah, The Post. I think he might have, or maybe he was the Vietnam reporter. And then he might have had a role in Spotlight too that was similar. Like if you look at his credits, you'll see it. He's got a few different
political
times where he's a journalist.
He's like, that's my shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Adam Driver's good. I think Annette Bening's good. I think you could maybe kind of roll your eyes at how his character has to go and do this research. He comes back to Annette Bening and sort of relays all that information to her. It's not the most like aesthetically satisfying way of telling the story, but it also just feels real to me that the senator, in this case Bening, needs to ask like clarifying questions, which also kind of stand out as like the means of clarifying for us what exactly is happening,
Yes.
right? Like, it's all like a little...
Yeah, it's a screenplay
kind of
trick to let us know things with
Mm-hmm.
her and use her as like an audience cue.
Mhm.
But there's also a layer of truth to the bureaucracy of like telling, it's like in your day-to-day life, just telling your boss like this basic thing. They're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. You're like, yeah, I fucking know. I told you that like a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. Or she's like, so what you're telling me is ...
Uh-huh.
You're like, okay, I see what we're doing here.
And she's like, okay, I'm on your side, but there's a manager higher than us that keeps us from being able to make that pivot. You know, like it's a very identifiable all the way down, even though it's kind of tropey.
Exactly. It's exactly what I want a senator to do, is ask clarifying questions, be sure she understands what the issue is. So that all kind of worked for me in spite of itself. And I kind of like the look of it, the style. I think it's kind of simple, but I mean, I thought of Mindhunter. This is not Mindhunter by any means. I like Mindhunter way better, but something just about the kind of drab office facilities and then the flashbacks being in that kind of more yellow tinted hue that just feels like a little grimier, a little more kind of decay-ish.
Is this where I bring up who the executive producer is? Steven Soderbergh.
There you go.
You're welcome. King of the office shot.
Yeah, no doubt. That all just kind of worked for me. I think it was kind of nicely shot. It's kind of more like handheld camera work in the flashbacks, which feel a little more kind of immediate, and then the smoother camera work in the present. It just feels kind of sturdy to me.
Yeah, it's competent. I think I had some problems with the edits. It's been a while since I saw it, but I do remember it got a little bit weirdly over choppy in a way that Atlantic's doesn't get choppy, even though it does something similar because of its pacing. Like, because of the report's more methodical pace, there's points that it just cuts like to a random different shot of a different person in a different office like every 6 or 8 seconds at one point, and it does it for like 2 minutes of like this voiceover narration where there's also dialogue from each scene that's like making a cohesive statement, and it just doesn't work. And that's one of those things where I can definitely see him building his form. This is his second feature film, but if you hear him talk about it, he talks about it like it's his first. I'm not too sure if PU 237 was an HBO film or not. Maybe that's why he doesn't count it. Maybe he thinks it's a TV film and this is like his first feature to him. But I definitely think he's going to get more competent, not less competent as a director.
Yeah, I could totally see that. There is not like a lot of time to like let these things breathe. We are moving pretty quickly from one person, one scene to the next. Also kind of with those, intertitles telling us what year it is.
Mm-hmm.
You're moving right along, and that's kind of like a bug and a feature for me. Like it's kind of efficient. It's also what holds it back from greatness, is that like it's just like so direct that like I don't know that I have time to feel things as deeply as something like Spotlight, where you really just feel like how many hours these people are spending, how just kind of hard it is to pour yourself into this,
and how Matt, like when I think about how that is edited and how much time we spend with those characters, and then those single moments where we get to see them in their home life with their spouse or without their spouse if they don't have one, and their type of loneliness with or without that spouse. That's one of the things that like is missing maybe from this. I can't tell if that should be there or not. It's definitely not there. Yeah. I don't know if it should be, but that might be playing into it. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Like, you kind of need that, I think, for it to really kind of get into like the top tier of this kind of genre. But there's also just something about the conciseness of it that I kind of went for.
Did you prefer this screenplay or the Laundromat screenplay more?
This one. What about you?
I think the Laundromat screenplay, I think it's more playful. I think I see a little bit more of an artist there.
It's
which is weird to say, but I think there's more there's more happening there. Like there's more that I want him to develop there. It's rougher, but there's more promise there, you know.
More surprising.
Yeah.
You kind of know the beats we're gonna hit as you're walking through the report, whereas we're kind of zigzagging through the laundromat, and there is, you know, some excitement.
It's risky, but it's playful. You know, there's a tone of life to it that the report probably shouldn't have. But just as far as his development, like I think I'm more interested in projects from him that aren't this serious in tone. Like I'm glad he made this one, but I'd like to see him make his own playful film and see that mature. You know, even if it's a swing and a miss and you feel worse about it than you felt about The Laundromat, I feel like that's maybe more who I'd like to see in 5 years as a writer director than this, personally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that sensibility melds with Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I haven't watched Fleabag extensively, but it's obviously a very comedic sensibility.
Yeah, I guess. It's expert. I don't know that I'd even classify it as a specific type of sensibility so much as expert. Because she straddles drama and comedy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know that I could pick a single side, but she is fantastic in everything that she's done that I've seen.
I like that.
Or written.
Any other thoughts on the report?
Just a question.
What you got?
Favorite scene?
You already have one in mind?
I do, yeah.
Why don't you go first?
My favorite scene is the ending, in which John McCain gives the real speech that he gave, which, in a movie that I did not expect to even feel a complex emotion, nearly got me to cry. Certainly had tears welling in my eyes, because, you know, the fact, just in contemporary culture, we just lost him very recently, and just a reminder of what type of voice he was, and what type of a bipartisan thinker he was. Even when he disagreed with someone, he was willing to hear them out. And that was, it just hit and it hurt a little bit.
I like it. I'm struggling to think of one in particular that just really stood out to me. So I'm going to dodge a little bit and just say that I liked most of the scenes with John Hamm pretty well. I've been kind of iffy on him in feature films, even though I loved him in Mad Men. This kind of felt right. For me, I like what he's doing here. So yeah, John Hamm, good.
Agreed. Didn't ham it up at all.
Exactly.
I'm Detective Lieutenant Elliot, and this is Trooper Wagner.
We just want to ask a few questions.
We understand the night of his demise, the family have gathered to celebrate your father's 85th birthday. How was it, by the way?
The party? Pre my dad's death? Oh, it was great.
Knives Out.
Directed by Rian Johnson. Written and directed by Rian Johnson, I believe. With a large cast of household names. Anna de Armas, Daniel Craig, Lakeith Stanfield, Toni Collette.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Michael Shannon. Boy, now we're hitting. Oh, Catherine Langford. There you go.
Chris Evans.
Oh, I thought you already got him. Okay. Yeah, Chris Evans.
We're going to start saying everything twice now. Daniel Craig.
I'm trying to remember that guy who took Kevin Spacey's role in All the Money in the World.
Christopher Plummer.
There you go.
I really thought we were done, but no, I forgot about Christopher Plummer.
The central character. And then I can't remember the guy's name, but I guess he's been Rian Johnson's collaborator a few times. The guy who kind of plays the audience cop role, where he says, no, shh, we want to hear this. I don't know if you remember. He has like 5 lines, and Rian wrote them specifically like for the audience to side with.
I didn't realize he was a frequent collaborator, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I think he's like a personal friend who just like
sneaks in.
Yeah,
I like it, and I like this movie quite a bit. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought this cast was great. I like the feel of it as kind of an old-fashioned mystery, but also with it feeling very much of its time. Just kind of that nice mix of old and new. I don't know that the ending to the murder mystery itself was wildly satisfying for me, but the journey getting there I thought was a pleasure. What about you?
No.
Should we move on?
Yeah. I vastly prefer a Kenneth Branagh Murder on the Orient Express remake that is actually like legitimately complex, where I don't know who it is. And even when I find out, I still don't trust myself. Or even J.K. Rowling's like A Cuckoo's Call, or Calling, in her little spurt of detective novels. It was just clearly telegraphed right away by Chris Evans. Well, spoiler. By Chris Evans' behaviors. We always spoil everything, so if you didn't know, that's on you.
Sorry.
And Ana de Armas's behavior in the opening act of the film. So I just knew what was going on. I didn't know the exact morphine everything beforehand, but I knew that like the person the people who aren't here are clearly not here for a reason, because that's the trick with murder mystery, is that everyone who's a suspect is already there. Okay, well, if you have suspects who aren't there, then it's them every time. And so as a fan of the genre, as someone who's read Agatha Christie and Holmes and stuff, like as soon as that happens and I've already solved it, I'm checked out of the movie and not going to enjoy it. And I didn't particularly care for Ryan's filmmaking in this. Some of the stuff looked neat. I don't think any of it looked incredible. And at this point, you know, it's the incredible scenes that I remember from The Last Jedi. It's the genre filmmaking of Looper that I appreciate. So not particularly fond, not super negative with this movie. It just, as someone who's a fan of the genre, it's not something I would put up there in the genre and recommend.
Yeah, I think I would agree about the murder mystery itself. Like, we start with this kind of even playing field where the various suspects, the various members of the family are introduced, and then we suddenly separate Chris Evans from the crowd, so it becomes not a question of who did it, but it's like, is it Chris Evans or not? Which is less satisfying to me. I didn't know. It's like, either it's kind of that sense like, well, he's clearly, you know, on a different kind of playing field now. So it either feels too obvious to assume that it's him,
or it's him with three hats.
Yeah,
and it's him with three hats.
It's a little more fun when it feels like a more sort of even crowd up until the end, and then one suddenly sort of emerges as the mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it has that, but I think the acting is just so fun to watch. I was not expecting to follow Ana de Armas' character like we do. Like, this is really kind of her movie. I thought this was going to kind of move a little more evenly between these people.
Which I think it does suffer from not doing that. Particularly like Michael Shannon. This is, I think, the most disappointed I've been by him in a role this decade.
I thought he was great.
I totally disagree.
I thought he was fun. I thought Ana de Armas was great. I thought that was a nice surprise. You know, it all feels a little, or not a little, it all feels quite heightened. You know, this is not, you know, realism by any means.
It's definitely a political film.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've seen some people, be not satisfied with some of the dialogue and how it feels like a little too much like internet speak with phrases like weak sauce and the alt-right trolls thing, which I would agree is like not how people talk in their everyday lives in 2019. But I would also say that people don't have like thrones made of knives and houses with false windows. Like, it feels as heightened with everything else in the movie and kind of in sync with this slightly over the top style that I thought was fun. That's what gives it some idiosyncrasy and gives it a kind of a memorable quality for me.
I think it's the tone that just doesn't work. For some reason, I don't see how the tone matches the sensibility there. Whereas, like, in Ready or Not, it works. We're suspending our disbelief, and it's just an attempted murder fest for a night until someone who appears is capable of omnipotently making people explode, right? And this never reaches that fun point. It always keeps trying to go crazy and then bring it all back to reality, and then make a political point out of that. And it's a hat on a hat on a hat, and it doesn't. I don't see it as working in the genre it's in, but I think comedically, maybe I would lean different. You know, if I was just judging it on whether or not it was funny, and Ana de Armas's continuous puking was, the best puking since The Girl in Hustlers.
Yeah, there has been, that has been a little bit of a trope this year, the puking. I saw someone call that out on Twitter. There was a third example. It's escaping me now, but you're right. There is something there. It is a political movie, and I think I liked that about it. To me,
is it wasn't Tully?
As a what?
Is it Tully?
She probably did throw up in that.
Yeah, that's the first thing I can think of.
It's very possible. I think I did like the political angle to it. I thought that's what made it an interesting story. To me, it's first and foremost. I mean, this is less about politics, actually. I don't know if that I would even use that word so much as it is just about entitlement and the idea that people turn on each other as soon as they feel like something that rightly belongs to them is pulled out from under them and given to someone else. I think that's really meaningful stuff, and that's the crux of this story, is that this family, they're clearly not made out to be angels by any means. But it's also a little ambiguous, the extent to which...
Don Johnson.
We forgot Don Johnson. We're going to keep throwing those out there, I'm sure. Someone like Michael Shannon's character who runs the publishing part of the business. It's not exactly clear, to me, the extent to which he does nothing himself versus actually having some kind of real day job. So I just think it's an kind of a fun question to think about. To what extent do these people, quote unquote, deserve any of this money? And at the same time, it's just fun to see them be kind of oblivious to how outrageously privileged they are, and how that kind of informs their sense of entitlement to it. I don't know. I just think that's all kind of fun stuff to chew on. I don't know that I would really call political. I mean, yeah, there's some, alt-right talk, but to me, that's not really the theme. It's more about people and what they think they deserve and are entitled to.
Yeah. I think that mostly when it gets political is when it's the younger characters that get involved. And I think like the entitlement is particularly at its best when Toni Collette's character is involved, because I think that her and Daniel Craig are acting in the same film, whereas with my personal sense, it's like Michael Shannon was just in a different movie, the way that he was performing, and Jamie Lee Curtis was somewhere in between those two. They were all just behaving differently. And I mean, when Toni Collette is having those interactions and trying to guilt trip Anna into the money and using her daughter to do that stuff, that all felt like real, if we were going to use the term politics, family politics, like that felt like it was sincere. But then the armchair conversations that Don Johnson's having while they're drinking, and he hears that she's from a different country and then says another country to her. That maybe that's not political, but I think that there's a constant strain of trying to have a political conversation that is not limited to entitlement. And I think that when it's talking directly about entitlement is when it's most interesting.
Yeah,
I think that it gets off the rails when it's moving away from that.
You're right. They're at that point talking about like immigration and the kids in cages at the border, yeah, that is like quite literally a political conversation for sure.
And then I guess there's a subtext to the drugs and in the legality, in the cuckoo clock and stuff, and like who's partaking in it. I think there's just a subtext of conversation that's political that I think it seems to have been widely understood that there's a political tone to the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand that conclusion, but to me, it's not, about Republicans and Democrats and partisanship. It's, to me,
correct.
Entitlement is a kind of political thing, but that conversation, I'm okay with that. Like, I like that movies, are representing conversations that people have. This is what's gonna make it like a good time capsule. This is what will make it interesting to someone 100 years from now, is to see something that looks really of its time. It'll look like a really 2019 kind of movie. I think that's what makes things age in kind of an interesting way. It's not a timeless movie, I don't think. I think it is timely in a kind of good way.
I think that might be where we disagree. I think that there's just a lot of other movies I'd point to being timely. Like, I'd pick The Laundromat over this, but I'd go Big Short for like movie of the decade to like have a conversation about who we are, over almost anything else. Yeah, I mean, maybe I might even walk back what I just said. Like, I think there is something timeless about the haves and the have-nots, and that seems actually pretty durable thematically. I mean, we just saw it in Keaton people talking about things that are specific to the era in which the movie came out, I think, will make it interesting to future generations. Okay, that's what I like about a 40s movie. Is not, the subtext might be something else, but I like that they're talking about things that happened in 1944. That's what gives it. That's what makes it a movie of its time to some extent. Yeah, well, I mean, when we were watching the Keaton movies, right? Like, there's a point where we go from Roaring '20s Keaton to the Depression era Keaton, and like the subtext of the film is that he's making a criticism of Depression era politics while he's also making a film in the system. So, like, that like maybe that will age and be interesting. If it is, I don't know that it would be Ryan's overt artistry and his screenplay that I would point to being the cause of that, so much as just he made a film that was true to him and it just happens to be true. That it's going to age in that complementary way. Yeah. I think I would agree. Like, this isn't going to really like elevate Rian Johnson as a director for me. Like, there isn't a set piece or any kind of camera work that I really love that's really going to stick with me, but I do like that he kind of lets these actors act. I like Daniel Craig doing the silky southern drawl. This kind of makes me think, as much as I like him as James Bond, what the opportunity cost is to having had him as Bond. I like him in this kind of role, like the Did Logan you like Lucky him role. Okay, I was about Absolutely. To say that. I'm like, this might be the Daniel Craig I like even better, actually. Yeah. I think Ana de Armas is very sympathetic, but not too pitiable. No, she's strong. Yeah, for sure. And, I think that's a fair point, that you could see these people in different movies. To me, they're kind of just heightened in different directions. Like Don Johnson's heightened as that kind of roughed up type who's going to be quick to punch somebody, whereas Michael Shannon's a little more wormy. He shows up in Ana de Armas's hallway saying, I'm going to get you deported. Yeah. They have different tactics. They kind of are heightened in different directions. But maybe I just live in a place of great pleasure because I get to watch things like Succession the same year I get to watch Mr. Robot, the same year I get to watch The OA, the same year I get to watch Legion. And so, maybe it's a little bit mean, but it's like I just watched Succession where like all of these characters are extremely heightened in totally different diaspora of directions, but they all are of the same fucking place. You know, they're all in the same family. I don't feel that in this movie. They're all supposed to be in the same family. I don't feel that at all. Like, I get that Don Johnson would be different than Jamie Lee Curtis, but it doesn't feel tangibly real that this is a real family. It feels more like this is a assembly of characters to represent different dialogues that Ryan wanted to see happen.
Didn't take me out of it like it sounds like it did you, but totally get it. I think I could see how that would happen. Favorite scene?
I guess it's not a singular scene, but I really, really enjoyed the chase scene with Chris Evans and Ana de Armas in the very slow car, and how they think they lost him, and they just pull up right next to him, and Daniel Craig just acts like he's her best friend. Just that whole comedic beat there, that was when it was most joyful for me. How about you? Especially with that rear view mirror of the ambulance and him going, oh shit.
Good stuff. I really kind of like this early stretch where Ana de Armas is kind of right next to Daniel Craig as he's, going about looking for clues before she goes off with Chris Evans. So the scene like...
Nervous eye work.
Say that one more time.
Her nervous eye work.
Yeah. That's great. Her, walking up the mud path and sort of playing dumb, the tension between them I thought was very fun. And seeing her just try to lead him off the set was all very satisfying.
She's so good.
She is very good.
Let's get on to the best title we'll talk about today. Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story.
I didn't ever really come alive for myself. I was just feeding his aliveness.
I'll never get to really be his parent again. He needs to know that I fought for him.
It's not as simple as not being in love anymore.
Eventually, it'll be the two of you having to figure this out.
This is my favorite Noah Baumbach film. How'd you feel about it, Michael?
I like this movie, for sure. I don't think I connected with it as strongly as many people have. Certainly one of the most anticipated titles of the year. Not my favorite Noah Baumbach. That remains Mistress America. I'd still probably put Meyerowitz above this as well.
Boo.
I haven't seen Frances Ha in a long time. I know that's a lot of people's favorite. But there's also some I haven't seen. I don't think I've ever seen Kicking and Screaming, Margot at the Wedding. So I am not a Baumbach completist by any way.
What's the, there's another one, While We're Young? No.
I have seen While We're Young.
Is that it? Is that the name of it? The Adam Driver, Ben Stiller one?
I like that one as well.
Yeah.
Did you see that one?
Yeah, I that's one of the ones that I'm most positive on.
Yeah.
Or like, remember fondly, I guess.
Yeah. I liked it. I think it's possible I just came in with such high expectations that I just didn't hit me quite as hard as I kind of was waiting for it to do, but I think there's a lot of good stuff here. I think I'm going to have mostly positive things to say. What about you?
I predict the reason you didn't like this film is because there's a young boy whose name is not Noah Jupe. So you're just pissed. Where am I at? I think it's one of the most complete films I've seen this year, screenplay and performance-wise. The edits, while totally against the grain and uncommon, felt really well-bodied and fully developed. I thought Randy Newman's score was fantastic, and it really...
Very nice score.
It created a world that I can feel. Very few films look like they feel a certain way and then stay with you afterwards. And I think that this is one of those ones that does that. There's some scenes at the end that are heartbreaking. There's heartbreaking scenes that are also hilarious. Specifically one with Merritt Weaver and Adam Driver, where Merritt's doing some of her best work, and she's done a lot of great work, and that was just a pleasure to see.
Who does she play?
She plays Scarlett's sister in California. She serves Adam's papers in the kitchen while they're play acting.
Not so smoothly?
Yes, but also incredibly smoothly, since that's her performance. So it's it was just a joy and a pleasure to see two halves make a whole film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the cast was the kind of best quality of it for me, particularly the supporting players, Laura Dern, Alan Alda, Ray Liotta, the lawyers. I think they all are critical roles since this is about divorce.
As well as the supporting families, whether it's real family or Adam Driver's theater family.
Absolutely. I think it pretty persuasively shows just how miserable divorce proceedings can be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty convincingly shows how a split that feels or seems amicable at first can turn only uglier as the process unfolds, and how sad that is that the people involved in the process can't kind of ease people through it. It seems to only deepen the resentment that led to this place and led this to happen in the first place. I don't know that I can really put my finger on what it was that maybe held me back from really loving it, like so many people have. My only kind of thought is that, we start this movie with them having pretty much already decided that their relationship's over, which isn't a judgment, just kind of an observation. And I think I kept kind of waiting to maybe feel more about what led them to each other in the first place. And I think I maybe kind of concluded that it kind of felt to me like they were maybe never a good match to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And how that somehow maybe just kind of undermined for me the weight to the proceedings versus if they had, at once been such this, had they once been such a great couple.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only kind of hypothesis for why I maybe didn't connect in a huge way. But yeah, what do you think?
And it's interesting. So separately, I mean, the extra textual quality of this film is he was married to Jennifer Jason Leigh since 2005 till 2013, who is an actor. I don't know if she's gone on to have a directing career, but then separately, he had also been working with Greta Gerwig as his star actress, and now she's going on to a directing career. So to me, the subtext of the film is these two relationships that are kind of intertwined, perhaps, where like he still seems to, by all accounts, respect and love Jennifer. They're just not compatible as life partners. And then Greta got too big for their relationship in some way and had to go do her own thing. And I think that maybe I'm viewing it as kind of a conversation to those very complex emotions through a story. And I thought that as a storyteller, what he did was just fantastic. And the way that he did it in the medium and the allowance that he gave the performers to feel that stuff on screen was just so special that I really loved it. It's not the same as Scenes from Marriage, which it does make constant allusions to, both with the title being in the film and otherwise. I wouldn't put them in the same league, but I do think that as far as like American sentimentality and complex adult emotions, this is pretty high up there.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And you said, how we uses the medium to tell the story is what makes it special. I think I'm totally with you on that. Like, I don't have any qualms with the style.
Okay.
And how it looks and moves and sounds. I think that's all really there. Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of kept waiting to feel more than I did. But I also just had a really great time watching it unfold. I was thinking about that last line of A.O. Scott's review of The Souvenir, which I think I might have quoted when we talked about The Souvenir, where he said something like, this is like as sad of a movie as you can imagine, and yet it's a joy to watch, which I kind of felt that way because like what Laura Dern is doing is so terrible, but it's also really fun to watch her do it.
And it's yeah, it's just amazing.
That is kind of hard to pull off.
It's like Toni Collette in Knives Out. Just amazing.
Same with Ray Liotta. Like, he is such a dick, but he's really fun to watch.
And he's so good at it.
he's like, this is a little like frighteningly convincing somehow. Like, are you like this? Like, it's to that point. And that's great stuff. You know, I might be willing to just chop it up to having been in a funk. Like, I might just need to come at it again and it'll hit me harder. That happens sometimes with me.
Yeah.
With expectations. And then I try to just figure out maybe what held me back, but it could just be that, you know, it was just a day or something.
Well, there's some movies where I'm not in like a cycle space, I guess, where it's like I need to wait 3 more years and then I'll love it. For some reason, you know, like I think we all go in waves of like reading or watching films or TV where we're really in the zone with a particular genre or like doing outdoor activities or something. We just go through phases. And I think that I've seen a few movies this year where I think that maybe I just wasn't in the phase of my life where I was going to love it the most. So if you think that's interesting, where did you land on the performances from the leads?
I liked them both quite a bit.
Okay.
I think they both, you know, really told me what I needed to know about them as characters. I think, you know, while I suspect it maybe had to do with what they meant to each other that was holding me back, who they each were was not so much an issue. The way he is sort of selfish, I feel kind of bad because I kind of care about this character to use that word, too. But he is kind of a selfish guy. But
so is she, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. You know, the way they both seem to just want to look away during these proceedings feels very believable. They just seem to want to curl up and just plug their ears. What about you?
Yeah, I loved it. There's moments in the film where I don't quite know what to do because we find out that a character has done something that we haven't seen that character do. And like particularly Scarlett Johansson going and seeing all these divorce lawyers as advised by Laura Dern, I would assume, did she know why she was doing that? Did she do that maliciously? If so, then her character or the embodiment of her character starts to not work for me. So I do have some questions about like where the decision-making processes were, but as far as like the moments that I spend with each character, the Adam Driver's dad character, and his love for her and not understanding and being genuinely that obtuse at some level to take a clue, sincerely was fantastic, and her feeling like he wasn't listening, where it all felt so real, that I thought it was fantastic. But I do have some questions about the screenplay and what exactly is implied by some moments that we don't see inhabited by the characters.
Yeah. So when you're talking about like Laura Dern or Scarlett Johansson's character going around to those lawyers, were you thinking that was Laura Dern or Scarlett Johansson?
I was thinking that Laura Dern, if Laura Dern didn't tell her to do that and not tell her why, then I don't know who her character is anymore.
Laura Dern's?
No, Scarlett Johansson's. Because it's Scarlett that has to meet with those lawyers to make them not available to him.
Right.
And who she's presenting as in the film isn't someone who would have gone and done that to him. So I was like, there's only one possible excuse, and I don't believe it's ever addressed with why she did that. So, yeah.
Yeah. The quote-unquote discourse around it, like within the last just 24 hours, surveying just my Twitter feed, which does not mean
what's that
much in the grand scheme of things. I was just shocked by how much I saw of Team Driver versus Team ScarJo, which I thought was fascinating. Like, to me, it's definitely about
The son.
I was just going to say divorce. Like, it's them versus divorce in a way. It's like, that's the villain.
Yeah.
But I think it is partly what you're talking about, where people are like, why did she lawyer up?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I don't
for
know that
me,
I can
she's
articulate.
decidedly less sympathetic than Adam Driver's character, which I think is maybe a reflection of the fact that Noah wrote the screenplay, not Jennifer or
Right?
Greta.
I think some people have said, that I think some people have complained about that it feels maybe unfair to her.
I don't know that it's unfair. I think that when people say it's even-handed, I would say that she comes off as being less in the right more often.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where I come out. I mean, I definitely was not in my head at all thinking about, as I watched it, whose side I was on. I was mostly just thinking about how rapidly this is becoming messy.
Yeah, it's not something I lived in while watching. It was just on the drive home and subsequent thinking about it, where I'm like, he was a dick there, and then it's like, but so was she.
Yeah. For me, it just had to do with almost kind of how startling at first it was that they seemed kind of like unfazed by their imminent split before any lawyers come about. I'm like, wow, it kind of seems like
no problem.
They're almost done with this.
Yeah.
And then they're really only just getting going. Like, it's when the legal mechanics kind of really get into gear that it suddenly gets so much worse. And this is like worse than anything they've had to endure as a couple deciding to split. It's just about, like, can they weather this alone, together, whatever. Less about, who's in the right and the wrong. I think that's just an interesting conversation for to have kind of developed. I think that'll probably go away. Sometimes Twitter just flares up, and then means nothing in the long run. So
yeah, I think that's likely the case.
Hot takes.
Did you feel profound things at all in this film? I certainly had some moments of like profound, like, chest welling up or tears rolling. I thought I was going to make it through the entire film without crying, and then the final scene in the street with a untied shoelace made me lose that that I had going for me. Did you have any heightened emotions in this film?
I definitely felt things. I don't know that I ever got quite to that point. But I completely get it. I was thinking about it more than I was.
Did you get to this in the theater, or did you watch it at home?
I watched this at home.
Oh, okay.
Which I am curious about. You saw this in the theater, right?
Sold out.
People laughing at the
laughing, groups crying, people
absolutely
slapping each other's knees. Yeah, it was an eclectic crowd and quite interesting. It was, mainly people in their 20s or lower, or mainly people over 60.
Yeah. Especially like around Julie Haggerty's character, ScarJo's mom, where I wasn't laughing out loud. And as soon as I realized I wasn't, I was like, I really regret not seeing this in the theater, because I definitely would be in that setting. Comedy, I think, really
is a public
pays the price. Yeah. That's really contagious. And I think this is a funny movie, even though I was like, I should be laughing out loud right now. This is funny stuff. And it's not as funny.
Like Alan Alda's stuff?
Yeah.
Or when they're looking at like some mature magazine in Alan Alda's office.
Yeah, I love that shot of Adam Driver's character looking at the clock. Just, that sense that it's so expensive. Like, you don't have time for this bullshit. Like, even if it is maybe going to be a funny joke, who knows? He is kind of a sweet guy. That it just feels like every minute is, just more money going through your wallet. That's effective stuff.
Yeah. I love this film. My favorite shot is that end shot in the street where she runs back across to tie the shoelace, and the prerequisite to that is her saying, "Do you want to take him home? We're gonna keep going, and I know it's my night, but he's tired. Do you want to take him?" There's just something not quite melancholy, but real close to it. That is from a place of love. Like it's melancholy plus love that's deeper than romantic love. That it just is really special in that scene. And the way that we linger with it, because it's the credit shot, so we just get to see the whole process of him loading him in, buckling him in, getting in the car, starting it, driving away. That makes it feel real.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. What's yours?
I think it's maybe the first scene with Ray Liotta's character, just because of how like funny and awful it is at the same time. Like I was very amused by it, and also just kind of like terrified for how clearly awful this is going to become. You know, that's just tone management in one single scene, in one single character. It is both funny and terrible at the same time. Very, very nicely handled.
Start from a place of reasonable, and they start from a place of crazy. When we settle, we'll be somewhere between reasonable and crazy.
On to Atlantics.
Ada xale góor yi dem na lan xale góor yi dem nañ géej jël nañu gaal Souleymane Cheikh ñoom ñëpp dem nañ.
Another Netflix original from Mati Diop, who comes from some pretty fancy genetic lineage as far as African cinema. And in real cinema, she's acted in a Claire Denis film, 35 Shots of Rum, and then a few others, as well as directed multiple shorts.
That's right. This is the first work by her that I've seen. Did you watch any of her shorts?
I attempted to, but they all have paywalls.
On Vimeo or something?
No, on,
other stuff?
Mubi and other platforms that I just wasn't willing to pay up for a short film. But
maybe
I was
double
tempted.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this premiered at Cannes, where it was maybe like the first film in Cannes by like a Senegalese director.
Oh wow!
I think I think that's what the attention was towards it, and
Okay.
won a prize. So it's been one that I was particularly excited for.
Well, maybe it's the first Senegalese film, because she's not Senegalese, is she? I thought she was French.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I shouldn't say. Don't know for sure. That's just what I was kind of remembering.
Gotcha.
I really like this film. It
yes,
met my expectations. I had high expectations. I don't know that it exceeded them, but I liked it a great deal. It had me fairly gripped for the entirety of its run time. I kind of wanted it to maybe just escalate in some way towards the end, but I still really like this a great deal. I found it quite haunting and atmospheric, and those are just the kinds of things I really like in my movie going. What about you?
Yes, I agree. Anytime jinn are used in film, I'm probably at least going to be interested. And this is no exception to that rule. I was fascinated by it. The landscape shots, whether it's through the windows of a structure of just topographical land, or if it's of the ocean waves moving back and forth, both were deeply moving. The way that she built the soundscape with the waves, and then goes on to use a rotating laser light in the dance club with the same soundscape going, and waves heard in the background lapping against the sand. There's an ethereal quality that she that comes most natural to her that I haven't quite seen anything like this year.
Yeah, to me, there's just kind of a instinctiveness or spontaneity to it that feels really natural, organic. And yeah, I mean, it eventually becomes a quite literal ghost story, but I think like immediately I just felt like there was just this kind of charge in the air that was very sort of eerie and palpable. I think like the very first shot is of the skyscraper that we keep returning to throughout the film. on one side of the frame, and on the other it's, you know, a building under construction. So immediately, you know, we kind of get this idea of a place growing, developing. Yet to me it kind of felt like a ghost town, just kind of how the wind felt, or how the wind sounded. It's kind of sparsely populated with construction workers in those first few scenes, which I just thought was a really interesting feeling for this place to be undergoing development and yet have that sense that it's kind of haunted. Like, it almost feels kind of deserted, even though that's not what we're seeing. It's just that kind of tactile atmosphere that was really compelling, and that we keep cutting back to the ocean before it really takes on any narrative significance. Has that really kind of mysterious quality to it. It's right after that opening shot that we're on, like, the back of a truck with one of these young construction workers. We're cutting to the ocean, cutting back to him, cutting to the ocean, cutting back to him. I don't really know why, except that I'm just immediately curious about what I'm watching. It just feels like there is something off about this.
Yeah, I knew
space.
I knew that there was math happening. I didn't know what the math was.
Right.
You know, which is just a way of saying there's a universal language to cinema if you have all your senses, I think, that you can see when someone's building associations with things. And just because you know they're building the association doesn't mean you know what it's there for. And I think that was the case with Suleiman and the truck and the waves being cut to, where before he ever gets in the ocean, we associate him with the ocean. So that when she looks at it or when she's walking by it, she's not only walking by the ocean, she's walking by Suleiman, or she's walking by the audience's memory of Suleiman, which is just, it speaks to the intuitiveness of her as a cinema maker. I think more than just a movie maker. I think that she is working in that language that we call cinema.
Yeah, 100%. I think the score was great. That definitely plays a role in building the atmosphere. And once the ghosts actually show up, I found it just really chilling, but moving at the same time. Yeah, what were your thoughts as it progressed?
Specifically about the ghosts, I thought it was genius to just use a normal actor, let them behave as if they're animated slightly, and then do that post-CG effect to make their eyes white. Or at least in one scene, she did a post effect. I don't know if in the other scenes they were wearing white contacts, but in one scene you do see his eyes turn white. I believe it's the agent's eyes that turn white, or the detective's eyes that turn white.
That's right.
It's a tough movie to talk about in that context. I don't really know how to talk about it other than I felt like it was working the whole time. You know, maybe it never, hit the high heights that I feel like she can get to, but it never stumbled at all. For me, the criticisms of capitalism, of religion, of custom, all of it was poignant and strong voiced, but not over the top. She just wasn't, as a filmmaker. I guess the one thing I would say about her is she's just not a coward. She's just gonna do what she thinks she should do, and she's gonna say what she thinks she should say, and there's something delicious about that, and the work that comes out of it.
Yeah. It is tricky to talk about when the narrative is kind of simple in a way, and it's more about the feel and the texture, and you can kind of describe the story in not that many words. I'm sure the Wikipedia summary is probably pretty brief.
Yeah.
But it's definitely more one that you just have to watch and feel, not just know.
Yes. You have to feel the mirrors on the wall in Suleiman's room change their context. You have to see the mother of Suleiman saying, "You saw my son." There's an implicit feeling to the moments of the film that is just, they're intangible but incredibly tangible at the same time.
Yeah. I have no idea if anyone's actually had this complaint, but one thing that like crossed my mind as we see these spirits taking up the bodies of the women
they left behind.
Yeah. Was if anyone would level the complaint that it's somehow like depriving them of agency by like bringing the men back through them, which is not a complaint I've read. I just kind of wondered if that would ever crop up. I didn't feel that way. I think it's a very
I think
symbolic.
If it does, it's wrong.
To me, it's a very just symbolic way of showing the burden of what these women have to bear after losing the boys that they love. So maybe that's a straw man argument that I just set up to knock down. But
I've definitely seen the complaint of Suleiman coming back as a man instead of a woman.
Oh, really? Oh, wait, was that Mike D'Angelo?
Yeah,
I did see that actually,
and
maybe that's what planted that in. Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that. And the other point was about why him, right? When the other girls are all kind of a group, he seems like a random additional person.
Yes,
which I don't know,
to serve the narrative.
It's a fair point, but like it never crossed my mind watching it. I don't know. It just didn't bother me. I don't know what more to say about it.
Well, I think that the use of a policeman is used for a further criticism of the time and the complicity of law enforcement in the power struggle that the native Senegalese have as global capitalism comes to their shore in bigger ways, which is represented by the tower and the construction. But there's also like a subtext to the types of people that these spirits find their way into. And I think that that's the real reason that I would point to, is that she's too strong to have a spirit inhabit her, and he was too compromised and questioning and corrupted. So the spirit found its way to him. That's what I would point to. I don't know if that's the real reason. I don't know how much of 1,000 Nights or 1001 Arabian Nights she's read, and like if that's playing into it or where she arrived at this stuff from. But that's the way that I read it.
Yeah. It was not something that came to mind during the watch. Only something that I had been left thinking about afterwards, and after reading that complaint. But can't say it has since taken much away from it for me.
Yeah.
Just because the mood is just so strong. Just like you said, there's no specific complaint about it. It's just the heights it reaches. I think I'm just going to use your words again. That she's got more in her, like
a lot more. Yeah. I'd love to see her collaborate with Claire and have Claire produce alongside her, or see her DP even for Claire. I think that if she could work with a French female filmmaker who's really strong, that maybe that would build up her storytelling dialogue, because that was so emotional and evocative that I think that I would want to see that paired with something more rich in conversation that also can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that I have a lot more to add. What about you?
What's your favorite scene?
You go first.
My favorite scene is when the lasers are going up and down while she's sitting there and we hear the ocean and the score. It's a very simple scene, but it was arresting. I was arrested.
I like the earliest sequences before I had any sense of where this story was going, and yet I was just feeling stuff. Yeah, the first introduction of this couple, really simple. Like this is really modest in a lot of ways. I don't know what the budget was, but like talk about like a strong return on investment, because it's just really effective with some really simple things that just knows the power of editing, like cutting back and forth between the ocean and a guy in a truck. Pretty simple stuff, pretty affecting. So some of those early sequences were I was quite taken with.
Agreed. But that scene in the dance hall and what it comes to mean, oh, so special.
That is Atlantics by Matty Diop.
And that is another complete episode, Michael.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
That was brilliant.
You're the best and we love you!
You might even say.
That's another one in the can.